Sometimes it feels like life throws surprises that can knock the ground out from under you. Sudden blows that leave you stunned, asking yourself, what is this? How could this happen? Is this really happening to me? Do you know that feeling? The sensation when everything seems to go off script, when circumstances conspire against you, and there's no way out in sight. Perhaps you've faced situations where you felt cornered, as if a trap had sprung shut, and every step only made things worse. Today we'll delve into a story that at first glance might seem like a mere historical episode, but is actually steeped in lessons relevant even today. It will show how, even in seemingly hopeless situations, you can not only endure, but also turn the tide in your favor. We'll discuss how expectations can be defied, and how meticulous preparation and a deep understanding of your craft can work wonders. We've often said that the key to success lies in managing expectations, especially in the crucial initial moments. That's why in this narrative we'll reveal several astonishing tactics that completely reversed the course of events in what seemed like a lost situation. And here's the first one. You probably think you know everything about handling crisis situations. But what if I told you there's a fundamental mistake many people make without even realizing it? A mistake that can prove very costly. You're making this mistake, but you don't notice it. Ready to find out what it is? And what if I asked you to forget everything you've been taught about the classic approach to problem solving? Because what you're about to learn today might seem like a complete contradiction. It's a fallacy if you believe traditional methods always work. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to comment below where you're watching this video from. So, with the introduction, we hope everything is clear. What's next? Next, we'll dive into the heart of the events, where each new twist in the story seamlessly flows into the next, creating a sense of continuous, captivating narration. There are no distinct boundaries between segments here, just one engaging tale. On the night of November 7th, 1943, as darkness enveloped Bougainville Island, Japanese destroyers silently cut through the black waters of Empress Augusta Bay. On board were nearly 500 soldiers of the 53rd Infantry Regiment, bound for a location their commanders believed was the most vulnerable point for American forces. The plan was textbook perfect. Covertly infiltrate the enemy's rear while the Marines slept, establish a beachhead, and crush the American shore perimeter with a devastating pincer movement. Major James Wilson received a radio message at his command post. Enemy forces had landed behind their positions. All Japanese doctrine pointed to the success of this endeavor. Surprise, darkness, superior forces attacking from an unexpected direction. The Marines were expected to panic, break, and be trapped between two forces with no possibility of retreat. But as the first Japanese soldiers advanced deeper into the dense jungle, they had no idea they were walking directly into the most perfectly organized killing zone in Marine Corps history. The Americans were not trapped at all. The radio crackled to life in Major James Wilson's command post at 0015 on November 8th. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. Enemy barges had been spotted landing 3 miles behind the main marine perimeter, near Coromocina Lagoon. Wilson set aside his coffee and intently studied the tactical map spread across his field desk. Red pins marked the forward positions of the 3rd and 9th Marine Regiments. Blue arrows indicated the presumed Japanese approach routes. And now he was plotting a new symbol behind their own lines. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to comment below where you're watching this video from. 500 Japanese soldiers from the 53rd and 54th Infantry Regiments of the 17th Division executed what their commanders believed was a brilliant flanking maneuver. While Marine attention was focused on the jungle from the north and east, destroyers slipped through the darkness and landed nearly half a battalion in the Marines' rear. The plan conformed to classic military doctrine. Establish a blocking position behind enemy lines, then attack from multiple directions to sow confusion and undermine morale. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph McCaffrey burst into the tent, his uniform still bearing traces of the red clay that covered everything on Bougainville. "Major, we have confirmation from the 12th Marine Regiment. Artillery observers counted at least 12 barges, possibly 15. They're offloading quickly." Wilson nodded, already calculating reaction times and fire missions. The Japanese had chosen their landing site well, a stretch of beach protected by coral reefs, making it difficult for larger vessels, but ideal for the shallow draft barges they favored for such operations. What the Japanese didn't know was that Marine Corps doctrine had evolved significantly beyond the static defense they expected to encounter. The 3rd Marine Division had spent months perfecting integrated fire support systems capable of responding to threats from any direction within minutes. While Japanese planning assumed it would take Americans hours to redeploy artillery and coordinate a response, the Marines had already rehearsed scenarios exactly like this one. Sergeant Herbert Thomas was checking his squad's positions along the inner perimeter when the first artillery rounds began to fall on the beach. The 12th Marine Regiment opened fire with its 75 mm Pulse howitzers, shelling the landing zone with devastating accuracy. Through his binoculars, Thomas watched Japanese soldiers scattering from the barges, some diving into the surf, others scrambling for the tree line. The 3rd Defense Battalion's 90 mm coastal guns joined the bombardment, their heavier shells cratering the beach and setting 2 barges ablaze. The Japanese had expected to achieve tactical surprise, but their own intelligence had failed them completely. Marine listening posts had tracked the destroyer's movement for over an hour, and shore observers had spotted the barges long before they reached the beach. By the time the first Japanese soldier set foot on the sand, pre-planned artillery concentrations were already raining down on predetermined target zones. What was intended to be a coordinated assault devolved into a desperate fight for survival under a torrent of fire. Captain Isamu Akamatsu led the first wave of Japanese infantry inland, his men moving in small groups through the dense jungle. They had trained for months in night operations and jungle warfare, confident in their ability to outmaneuver the Americans in the rugged terrain. But as they pushed deeper toward their objectives, they began to encounter something unexpected. Marine positions that seemed to know precisely where they were coming from. Machine gun nests positioned to cover likely approach routes, artillery observers with direct lines to gun batteries, and flares that illuminated entire sections of the jungle at precisely the wrong moments. Private First Class Robert Carter manned an M1919 .30 caliber machine gun when the first Japanese patrol blundered into his sector of fire. The Marines had established interlocking fields of fire that created killing zones at every natural choke point between the beach and their main positions. Carter's machine gun position, dug in behind a fallen log and camouflaged with jungle vegetation, covered a narrow trail that Japanese scouts had identified as their primary infiltration route. When the lead elements appeared in his sights, Carter held his fire until the entire patrol was within the kill zone, then opened up with controlled bursts that scythed down the front rank and scattered the survivors. The Japanese assault began to unravel within the first hour. Units that were supposed to advance in coordination found themselves pinned down by accurate machine gun fire or shattered by artillery concentrations that seemed to anticipate their every move. Radio communication among Japanese elements became sporadic as the Marines jammed their frequencies. While American coordination remained flawless thanks to superior communication equipment and established protocols, Wilson tracked the battle from his command post, receiving constant updates from forward observers and artillery spotters. Have you ever felt caught off guard, as if all your plans were crumbling and chaos was taking over? What if I told you that precisely in such a seemingly hopeless situation lies the key to victory? In this account, we'll delve into the events of a night battle where conventional notions of warfare were shattered. Prepare to learn how the Marines not only repelled an attack, but turned an enemy's cunning into a deadly trap. You make this mistake by underestimating preparation, but you don't notice it, and today we'll show you how to avoid it. Imagine the darkness of night, where every rustle seemed a threat, and enemy silhouettes flickered in the light of muzzle flashes. The Japanese attack unfolded exactly as Marine defensive doctrine predicted. Chaos born of darkness, unit fragmentation due to difficult terrain, and mounting casualties among commanders who, attempting to maintain order, became targets themselves. The Americans, however, managed to turn the enemy's attempt to surprise them into their undeniable advantage. Using superior firepower and a well-established communication system, they methodically annihilated the landed forces. It was at this critical juncture that Sergeant Thomas led his squad in a counterattack that would later earn him the Medal of Honor. Moving through terrain lit only by the flashes of flares and machine gun bursts, he coordinated with adjacent units to encircle the remaining Japanese positions. His coolness under fire became legendary among the Marines who fought with him that night. When a fragment from a Japanese grenade pierced his left arm, Thomas, disregarding the wound, continued to direct fire from an exposed position, refusing medical aid until the immediate threat was neutralized. By the way, friends, stay with us and watch until the end, as there are many more astonishing details of this battle to come. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. By 04:04 a.m., the Japanese rear attack had completely faltered. What began as a meticulously planned flanking maneuver devolved into a one-sided slaughter. The landing forces, intended to trap the Marines in a pincer, found themselves caught in a snare, squeezed between the shore they had landed on and the impregnable Marine positions. Artillery continued to shell withdrawal routes, while Marine infantry methodically eliminated scattered survivors. The night, which was meant to break American morale, instead showcased the overwhelming superiority of the Marine Corps' combined arms tactics. Dawn was about to reveal the true scale of the catastrophe born of Japanese overconfidence. And speaking of which, if you're already curious how this was possible, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and definitely leave a comment telling us where you've joined us from. Your support is very important. Japanese soldiers fortunate enough to survive the initial artillery barrage found themselves in a tactical nightmare for which they were unprepared. The remnants of Captain Akamatsu's men were scattered for nearly 2 miles through the jungle, cut off from their landing craft and facing marine positions that seemed to anticipate their every move. The convenient assumptions that guided Japanese strategists, that Americans fought predictably, that their fire support required time to coordinate, that darkness would provide cover, were shattered by the harsh reality of modern warfare as waged by the Marine Corps. Sergeant Thomas moved through the pre-dawn darkness with the honed precision of a veteran who had learned to read the terrain like an open book. His squad took positions along a ridge, commanding the approaches to the main marine perimeter, their M1919 machine guns positioned to create interlocking fields of fire over the valley below. When Japanese infiltrators attempted to bypass his position using a stream bed, Thomas ordered aimed bursts that forced them back into open ground, where artillery observers could call in fire missions with deadly accuracy. And this was just one of many examples of how every element of the defense worked like clockwork, anticipating the enemy's next move. The Japanese expected to encounter the type of static defense they had previously met in the Pacific Theater. Isolated strong points that could be cut off and overwhelmed by concentrated assault. Instead, they found themselves facing a defensive system that functioned as a single, living organism. When one marine position engaged, adjacent units automatically adjusted their fields of fire to prevent enemy withdrawal or flanking. Artillery rained down on pre-registered coordinates within minutes of a request. Communication between units remained constant despite the chaos of night combat, paving the way for understanding the next level of coordination. Major Wilson coordinated the Marine response from his command post with the cool efficiency of an officer who had meticulously studied every aspect of defensive warfare. His field phone connected him directly to artillery batteries, mortar sections, and forward observers positioned throughout the perimeter. When reports came in of Japanese movement in Grid Square 174, Wilson already had pre-calculated firing data for that location. When observers spotted enemy forces attempting to establish a firing base, pre-planned artillery concentrations rained down on their positions within 3 minutes. But what made this coordination so rapid and deadly? The Japanese discovered with horror that their own tactical doctrine had become obsolete virtually overnight. The small unit infiltration tactics that had worked successfully against Chinese forces and early American positions in the Pacific proved utterly useless against Marines who had learned to fight as integrated combined arms teams. Every rifle squad was supported by machine guns positioned to provide mutual support. Every company had direct links to artillery batteries capable of delivering accurate fire on targets across the entire battlefield. Every battalion had pre-registered fire missions covering likely enemy approach routes, culminating in one of the most brutal engagements. Private Carter's machine gun position became the epicenter of the Japanese assault when Akamatsu led a desperate attack on what he mistakenly believed was an isolated American strongpoint. The captain gathered nearly 40 survivors from his scattered landing force planning to overwhelm the Marines with numerical superiority and close-quarters combat. However, Carter's gun was part of a meticulously planned defensive network that included interlocking fields of fire from 3 adjacent positions and direct support from a mortar section located 800 yards to the rear. When the Japanese attack began, Carter held his fire until the attackers were within 50 yards, then unleashed a torrent of fire that scythed down the leading elements and forced the survivors to take cover in a depression pre-registered as reference point 7. Within 30 seconds of Carter's first shot, mortar rounds rained down on the depression with deadly accuracy. The assault that was meant to break the American lines instead resulted in 23 Japanese casualties and the virtual destruction of Akamatsu's remaining command structure. And all of this was possible due to one key element. This battle demonstrated the revolutionary impact of radio communication on small unit tactics. While Japanese units struggled to maintain contact using signal flags and runners, who easily became targets for Marine snipers, American forces maintained constant communication via SCR-300 radios that directly linked squad leaders to their company commanders. When Thomas reported enemy movement in his sector, supporting units were already adjusting their positions, even before the Japanese reached their assault points. When artillery observers requested fire missions, batteries responded within minutes, not hours, as such coordination would have required in earlier wars. Tactics, communication, and an unwavering spirit? These are what decided the outcome of that night. Imagine this. You are a battle-hardened warrior, confident in your night tactics, which have led to countless victories. You believe that darkness is your faithful ally, capable of concealing every movement, every maneuver. But what if that very darkness, your shield and sword, suddenly turns against you, becoming an impenetrable veil for your own defeat? How is this possible? For years, Japanese night fighting techniques, honed in countless engagements against less equipped adversaries, had proven their effectiveness. However, on Bougainville, they transformed into veritable death traps when confronted by Marines equipped with night vision gear and coordinated fire support. This was not just a battle, it was a turning point where outdated notions of warfare were ruthlessly disproven. In this analysis, we will show, step by step, how traditional methods were crushed by innovative power. And here is the first thing that changed the course of events. Covert infiltration routes, which seemingly should have ensured complete invisibility, instead led directly into pre-planned kill zones. Attack positions that appeared tactically advantageous were, in reality, within range of multiple Marine weapons systems. The night itself, intended to conceal Japanese movements, paradoxically hid the Marines who knew every inch of their defensive sector. Forget everything you were taught about night operations in the jungle. Here, invisibility became a death sentence. Stay with us and watch until the end to discover all the details of this astonishing battle. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription, and of course, don't forget to comment below where you're watching this video from. Imagine this. During the 6 hours of this night-long engagement, the 75mm howitzers of the 12th Marine Regiment fired over 400 rounds. Each was aimed with pinpoint accuracy at targets identified by forward observers, who maintained continuous visual contact with Japanese units throughout the night. Joining this deadly chorus were 90mm coastal guns, whose shells created massive craters instantly obliterating entire Japanese squads. By 3 a.m., Japanese return fire had virtually ceased, reduced to sporadic rifle shots from scattered survivors running low on ammunition and out of communication with their command. But this was merely the beginning of their strategy's complete collapse. It was at this moment, as chaos engulfed the enemy ranks, that Sergeant Thomas led his squad in a series of limited counterattacks. These maneuvers were meticulously planned to finally collapse the remaining Japanese positions without exposing his men to undue risk. His tactical decisions were a vivid embodiment of the new Marine Corps doctrine, which prioritized firepower over maneuver. Instead of simply pushing the enemy back, they used superior weaponry and flawless communication to utterly destroy enemy forces. When Thomas's squad encountered a Japanese machine gun nest still capable of effective fire, he did not launch a frontal assault. Instead, he called in precise artillery strikes that neutralized the position without a single casualty on his side. Thus, the Japanese landing party, numbering nearly 500 men at midnight, was reduced to fewer than 100 combat-effective soldiers by dawn. But what awaited those who managed to survive this inferno? We will tell you more about that next. The few who survived the night found themselves trapped. They were caught between the shore, where their landing craft had been destroyed by artillery fire, and the impenetrable marine positions, forming an insurmountable barrier to retreat. The planned rear attack, intended to break American resistance, instead vividly demonstrated the utter futility of traditional tactics in modern combined arms warfare. This was not just a failure, but a complete collapse, the full scale of which became evident with the first rays of the sun. As the sun rose over Bougainville, the true extent of the Japanese tactical disaster became evident to both sides. Dawn revealed the full depth of the calamity that had befallen Japan's 53rd Infantry Regiment. Bodies were scattered across the jungle, a grim testament to the lethality of modern American firepower. Captain Akamatsu, whose body was found 50 yards from Private Carter's machine gun position, still clutched his sword. His final charge had brought him almost to the Marine lines before accurate rifle fire ended his life. The beach, where just 12 hours earlier 500 soldiers had landed, had become a graveyard of twisted metal and abandoned equipment. The charred hulks of landing barges now marked the high point of Japanese ambition, which had simultaneously become their tomb. But what were the consequences of this battle for American forces? Major Wilson, walking the battlefield as the morning light pierced the dense jungle canopy, surveyed the results of what military historians would later call a perfect defensive battle. His Marines had lost 17 killed and 32 wounded, casualties that were astonishingly light given the ferocity of the night's fighting. Japanese losses, however, were catastrophic by any measure. Intelligence officers counted 237 confirmed enemy dead, with blood trails and drag marks indicating that many more fighters had been killed or wounded, but carried away by their comrades during the chaotic retreat. What lessons were learned from this bloody encounter? The tactical lessons drawn from this engagement were as clear as they were revolutionary. Traditional infantry assault tactics, honed over decades of conflicts in China and Southeast Asia, proved utterly inadequate against an adversary equipped with modern communication, coordinated artillery support, and integrated defensive systems. The Japanese had planned their attack based on outdated assumptions, expecting to face the static, poorly coordinated defenses they had encountered in earlier Pacific campaigns. Yet, even in this chaos, there were those who continued to fight, demonstrating incredible resilience. Sergeant Thomas, despite his own injuries, shrapnel cuts on his left arm and a bullet grazed to his shoulder, which were bandaged by medics working with calm efficiency, directed the evacuation of wounded Marines while his squad secured the area around the aid station. He steadfastly refused evacuation, insisting his men needed leadership more than he needed medical attention. His actions during this battle would earn him the Medal of Honor, but even the official citation would likely fail to fully capture the tactical genius he displayed in coordinating fire and managing his squad's response to numerous Japanese attacks. And what happened to the remnants of the Japanese forces trapped in this nightmare? The surviving Japanese soldiers found themselves in a hopeless tactical situation as daylight fully exposed their positions to Marine observation. Small groups sought refuge in coral caves and dense jungle undergrowth, but their isolation was absolute. No radio contact with headquarters, no possibility of resupply or reinforcement, and no viable retreat path not covered by American weaponry. Lieutenant General Imamura's grand strategy had collapsed, devolving into a desperate struggle for individual survival among the scattered remnants of what was once an elite infantry battalion. But how did the Marines complete this operation? Marine patrols began a systematic sweep of the battle area, employing tactics reflecting hard-won experience in Pacific jungle warfare. Instead of advancing in traditional formations that could be lured into ambushes or directed into killing zones, they moved in small groups, maintaining constant radio contact and having immediate access to artillery support. When Japanese survivors opened fire from hidden positions, the Marines responded with overwhelming firepower, rather than costly attempts to dislodge them in close combat. And one of the most effective tools in this was heavy machine guns. The M2, 50-caliber heavy machine guns, positioned to cover the beach approaches, proved devastatingly effective against Japanese attempts to establish defensive positions in coral formations. The heavy rounds penetrated cover that offered protection from rifle fire, and the psychological impact of the weapon was immense. Japanese soldiers who had endured artillery barrages and mortar fire often broke and ran when the distinctive sound of 50-caliber machine guns opened fire on their positions. Thus concluded one of the most illustrative battles of World War II, forever changing perceptions of modern warfare. Have you ever felt that history's bloodiest battles are always won only at the cost of unimaginable sacrifices and endless assaults? Well, if you believe that the outcome of World War II in the Pacific was determined solely by numerical superiority and heroic, yet often reckless attacks, then this video will make you rethink your views. We will show how one of the most common misconceptions about that war conceals the true mechanisms of victory, which are still not fully understood by many. Perhaps you, like many, have experienced some intellectual pain trying to understand how seemingly insurmountable Japanese defensive positions could be broken without catastrophic losses. We once grappled with this question too, but in this material, we will not just tell, but demonstrate how 3 innovative tactical techniques were developed and implemented, allowing American forces to systematically destroy the enemy while minimizing their own casualties. And the first of these began to manifest itself at dawn. At dawn that day, forward artillery observers called in fire missions with deadly precision, using methods honed over months of intensive training and combat experience. When Marine patrols encountered resistance, they did not launch frontal suicidal attacks, but skillfully withdrew to safe distances to call for artillery support. The result was a methodical, almost surgical destruction of Japanese positions, which minimized American casualties and maximized damage to the enemy. Stay with us and watch until the end to fully understand this transformation. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from. Knowing our audience is very important to us. Private Carter's machine gun team moved forward to support the final mop-up. Their M1919 repositioned to cover new sectors of fire as the Marines expanded their control over the battle zone. Carter fired over 800 rounds during the night's fighting, performing barrel changes with mechanical precision, despite the chaos of battle. Japanese bodies scattered around his initial position eloquently testified to the lethal effectiveness of properly employed automatic weapons in defensive operations. To not miss the next important details and see the full picture, stay with us and watch until the end. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and don't forget to tell us in the comments from what corner of the world you are watching our channel. The psychological impact of this engagement extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Captured or surrendered Japanese survivors reported complete demoralization within their units, with many soldiers expressing disbelief at the speed and accuracy of American fire support. The coordinated response that shattered their attack undermined fundamental assumptions about the combat capabilities and spirit of American forces that had guided Japanese strategy throughout the Pacific War. The Marine Corps doctrine, emphasizing integrated combined arms warfare, proved its superiority over traditional infantry tactics in the most decisive manner. The Japanese landing force was annihilated not by numerical superiority or individual heroism, but by the systematic application of firepower, clear communication, and flawless tactical coordination. Every element of the Marine defensive system functioned exactly as intended, from the initial detection and tracking of enemy forces to the final elimination of scattered survivors. By noon on November 8th, organized Japanese resistance had completely ceased. The few survivors remaining in the battle zone were isolated individuals or small groups without weapons, equipment, or leadership. Marine patrols continued to clear the area throughout the day, but the battle was effectively over. Lieutenant General Imamura's attempt to envelop the American beachhead resulted in the complete destruction of almost an entire battalion of his best troops. Major Wilson submitted his combat report with satisfaction, yet his joy was tempered by the understanding that similar battles lay ahead as American forces pushed deeper into Japanese territories. The tactical innovations demonstrated at Bougainville became standard doctrine for Marine operations throughout the remainder of the Pacific War. The night that was supposed to mark the beginning of an American defeat instead revealed the overwhelming superiority of modern combined arms warfare over traditional infantry tactics. The methodical elimination of surviving Japanese continued on November 9th and 10th. A grim process that demonstrated both the thoroughness of Marine operations and the hopelessness of the enemy situation. M1917 light tanks from the 3rd Tank Battalion joined the final sweeps, their 37mm guns and machine guns, providing devastating firepower against Japanese positions that had been bypassed during the night's fighting. The tanks moved through the jungle with surprising maneuverability, their crews experienced in direct support methods for infantry operations in dense terrain. Sergeant Thomas led his squad in the systematic clearing of coral caves where Japanese soldiers had taken refuge. These natural fortifications provided excellent protection from small arms and artillery shrapnel. But they became death traps when Marines used flamethrowers and explosives to eliminate those hiding within. Thomas coordinated with combat engineers who placed shaped charges at cave entrances, collapsing tunnels, and sealing those inside. The work was dangerous and grueling, requiring meticulous coordination to prevent friendly fire incidents as multiple units operated in close proximity. Aircraft from the 7th Fighter Squadron provided close air support throughout the final phase, their pilots skilled in the precise targeting required for jungle warfare. Corsair fighters carried 500-pound bombs and rockets, which were devastatingly effective against Japanese positions that remained hidden from ground observation. When Marine patrols marked targets with colored smoke grenades, aircraft could deliver ordnance within 50 yards of friendly positions, a level of accuracy that would have been impossible in earlier stages of the war. Major Wilson established his forward command post at a captured Japanese position, examining equipment and documents that revealed the extent of the enemy's planning for the failed operation. Maps showed detailed intelligence on Marine positions, communication networks, and supply routes. An inventory of equipment indicated that the landing force was outfitted for sustained operations, with ammunition and provisions sufficient for a week-long campaign. The Japanese clearly expected their rear attack to succeed, planning to establish a permanent blocking position that would choke off American operations on Bougainville. This intelligence haul provided valuable insights into Japanese tactical doctrine and planning methods. Documents captured from Captain Akamatsu's command group revealed that enemy commanders had severely underestimated American defensive capabilities, expecting to encounter the same isolated strongpoints that characterized earlier Pacific battles. Japanese planning assumed that American artillery would be slow to react and inaccurate in night conditions, and that American units would be unable to coordinate effective counterattacks in the dark. Have you ever felt cornered, where every attempt to break through met an invisible wall, where the enemy seemed to know your every move, and your time-tested tactics crumbled to dust? Many believe that the outcome of any confrontation is decided by numerical superiority or surprise, but the story we are about to tell refutes these dogmas, demonstrating how even the most desperate attacks can turn into a complete and irreversible collapse. This was precisely the situation American Marines found themselves in on Bougainville, facing Japanese resistance that threatened to be their undoing. The Japanese command made a fatal error, one that many military strategists repeat to this day, without realizing its true cost. Today, we will reveal what exactly went wrong for one side and how the other managed not just to stand firm, but to achieve a crushing victory, changing the course of the entire campaign. In this video, we'll explore 3 key aspects that turned a potential catastrophe for American forces into a triumph. And here's the first. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. Private Carter, with his machine gun team, participated in the final clearing operations, providing cover for other Marines advancing through areas where Japanese resistance might still be hidden. The psychological toll of the protracted fight was evident among both American and enemy forces. Yet Marine discipline and superior logistical support allowed them to maintain combat effectiveness, while Japanese survivors suffered from hunger, exhaustion, and complete isolation from their command. This disparity in conditions not only affected morale, but also predetermined the outcome of engagements. The few Japanese prisoners captured during the final operations provided additional insights into enemy morale and tactical effectiveness. Most reported that their units had lost cohesion within the first hours of the battle, and communication breakdowns and heavy officer casualties made coordinated resistance impossible. Many expressed surprise at the speed and accuracy of American artillery counterfire, as they had been told that Marine fire support was inferior to Japanese standards. This factor, it turned out, became one of the key elements that undermined enemy morale. Marine casualties during the final clearing operations were surprisingly light. Only 3 killed and 8 wounded over a 2-day period. This disparity reflected both the effectiveness of American tactics and the complete collapse of organized Japanese resistance. Surviving enemy soldiers were scattered, poorly equipped, and leaderless, while Marine units maintained full combat effectiveness due to continuous resupply and reinforcement from the main beachhead, providing them with an undeniable advantage. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. The final count of Japanese casualties reached 377 confirmed killed, with estimates suggesting total losses approached 400 when accounting for those killed or wounded and carried away by surviving comrades. The landing force, numbering nearly 500 men at the operation's outset, was virtually annihilated. Fewer than 20 prisoners, and perhaps around 50 survivors, who managed to escape through the jungle and join other Japanese units. These figures served as a harsh reminder of the cost of errors in military planning. Thomas received news of his Medal of Honor recommendation as his squad fortified defensive positions around the cleared battle zone. The citation highlighted his leadership under fire and his role in coordinating the counterattacks that broke Japanese resistance. However, Thomas's comrades understood that his actions represented something more. They symbolized the transformation of American military doctrine from individual heroism to the systematic application of superior firepower and coordination, which became the foundation for future victories. The strategic implications of this engagement extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation on Bougainville. Japanese commanders throughout the Pacific were forced to reassess their assumptions about American military capabilities and combat effectiveness. The coordinated defensive response that crushed the 53rd Infantry Division demonstrated that Marine units could not be defeated by traditional tactics of infiltration and surprise attacks. This served as a wake-up call for the Japanese General Staff, signaling a shift in strategy. Wilson compiled detailed after-action reports that influenced Marine Corps doctrine throughout the remainder of the Pacific War. His analysis highlighted the critical importance of integrated fire support, reliable communication, and meticulous preparation of defensive positions. The methods proven successful on Bougainville were refined and applied in subsequent operations, contributing to a series of devastating defeats that ultimately compelled Japan to surrender. Thus, a single battle became a catalyst for changing an entire military strategy. The battlefield itself was transformed into a training ground where newly arrived Marines could study the effectiveness of proper defensive tactics. The positions where Thomas directed his counterattacks became benchmarks for small unit leadership training. The Coral Caves, where Japanese soldiers made their last stand, were used to demonstrate the correct application of flamethrowers and explosives in close-quarters combat situations. This allowed for maximum lessons to be extracted from the experience. As November 10th drew to a close, the last organized Japanese resistance in the battle area was eliminated. The rear attack, intended to lure American forces into a crushing pincer movement, instead became a textbook demonstration of modern combined arms warfare's superiority over traditional infantry tactics. Lieutenant General Imamura's strategy not only failed completely, but also cost him nearly an entire battalion of experienced troops, a loss felt throughout subsequent operations. The night, which began with Japanese confidence in their tactical superiority, ended with a complete affirmation of American military doctrine and the utter destruction of enemy forces that dared to challenge Marine defensive positions. The morning of November 11th brought an unusual silence to the Bougainville beachhead, as Marine units consolidated their positions and processed the lessons learned from the crushing Japanese defeat. Major Wilson stood on the ridge where Sergeant Thomas had performed his heroic feat, surveying a battlefield transformed from dense jungle into a moonscape of shell craters and destroyed vegetation. The tactical implications of what had transpired here would influence military doctrine for years to come, but the immediate human cost demanded recognition and reflection. Grave registration teams worked methodically across the battlefield, identifying and processing American casualties with the dignity and respect that honored their sacrifice. Each of the 17 Marines killed in action was photographed and documented before burial in a temporary cemetery established near the beachhead. Their names would be transmitted to their next of kin, along with letters explaining that they had died defending American positions against an overwhelming enemy onslaught. While the full details of their tactical victory remained classified for several months, Thomas oversaw the construction of defensive fortifications, designed to prevent any repeat attempts at Japanese infiltration. His squad learned valuable lessons about machine gun placement for maximum effectiveness in jungle conditions, techniques that would be incorporated into Marine Corps training manuals and disseminated to units throughout the Pacific Theater. The positions where his men had fought so effectively were meticulously mapped and analyzed by intelligence officers seeking to understand precisely why American defensive doctrine had proven so superior to Japanese assault tactics. Imagine the moment when unwavering confidence in one's own invincibility crumbles to dust in a single night. After all, each of us has at some point faced a situation where our seemingly flawless plans shattered against harsh reality. I myself have found myself in such a position more than once, but it is precisely these moments that truly teach us. In this video, we will reveal how just one night on a Pacific island forever changed military strategy and why some lessons remain relevant today. You make this mistake in every one of your plans without noticing it. And it is precisely this that can lead to collapse. Forget everything you've been taught about numerical superiority. It's a lie that has cost thousands of lives. Stay with us and watch until the end, because it will only get more interesting. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course write in the comments where you are watching us from. The psychological shock of this encounter permeated both military hierarchies, fundamentally altering strategy for the remainder of the Pacific War. Japanese commanders, receiving reports of the catastrophe, struggled to comprehend how an elite infantry battalion could be virtually wiped out in a single night by a defensive force outnumbered by the attacking troops. The coordinated firepower and tactical flexibility demonstrated by the Marine units challenged fundamental assumptions about the effectiveness of American forces that had guided Japanese planning since Pearl Harbor. One of the most striking examples of this sudden and crushing superiority was embodied in the actions of Private Carter, whose machine gun was credited with over 60 confirmed enemy casualties. His position became one of the deadliest single-weapon systems in the entire battle. Military historians later meticulously studied the precise placement of his machine gun and the fields of fire it controlled, recognizing that his tactical situation represented an ideal application of automatic weapons in defensive operations. The crossfire he coordinated with adjacent positions became a textbook example of how properly positioned machine guns could dominate terrain and funnel enemy movement into predetermined kill zones. Intelligence analysis of captured Japanese documents revealed the full extent of the enemy's miscalculation that led to this disaster. Planning documents clearly showed that Japanese commanders expected to encounter static defensive positions, manned by troops with limited night fighting capabilities and minimal artillery support. Their tactical doctrine assumed that American units would require hours to coordinate counterattacks, and that individual Marine positions could be overwhelmed by a concentrated assault before supporting artillery could be brought to bear. The reality they faced was devastatingly different from their expectations, demonstrating that sometimes the deepest beliefs can prove to be the most dangerous delusions. In contrast, Marine defensive doctrine emphasized mobile defense with integrated fire support, capable of responding to threats within minutes, not hours. Communication systems linking every rifle squad to battalion-level fire support meant that isolated Japanese assault groups found themselves under accurate artillery fire almost immediately upon detection. Night vision equipment and coordinated illumination allowed Marines to engage targets that believed themselves hidden by darkness, turning the night from an ally into a relentless enemy for the attackers. Stay with us and watch until the end, because it will only get more interesting. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course write in the comments where you are watching us from. Wilson was ordered to prepare detailed after-action reports for dissemination to Marine units across the Pacific, with a particular focus on the tactical innovations that proved most effective against Japanese night assault methods. His analysis significantly influenced defensive doctrine at Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and other critical battles, where American forces faced similar infiltration attempts. The methods pioneered during the Bougainville engagement saved thousands of American lives in subsequent operations, proving that lessons learned from one battle could have far-reaching consequences. The strategic implications of Lieutenant General Imamura's failed operation extended beyond the immediate tactical situation, influencing Japanese planning across the theater. The loss of nearly an entire battalion of experienced troops represented a significant reduction in Japan's combat effectiveness on Bougainville. But the psychological impact was even more devastating. Word of the catastrophe spread quickly through Japanese units, undermining confidence in traditional tactics and command decisions, and sowing seeds of doubt where unwavering belief had once reigned. Medical personnel provided aid to the wounded from both sides with a professional competence reflecting the highest standards of military medicine. American casualties received immediate evacuation to field hospitals equipped with the latest surgical techniques and pharmaceuticals. Wounded Japanese who could be saved were given medical attention, often superior to what their own forces could provide, though many died from injuries that would have been treatable with faster care, highlighting the disparity in logistics and medical technological development. Thomas was formally recommended for the Medal of Honor by his battalion commander, who cited his exceptional leadership under fire and his role in coordinating the defensive actions that broke the Japanese resistance. The recommendation included detailed testimonies from Marines who fought alongside him, describing how his calm presence and tactical expertise were crucial to the successful defense. The medal was awarded 6 months later in a ceremony that celebrated not only individual heroism, but also the collective excellence of Marine Corps training and doctrine, becoming a symbol of how courage and strategy go hand in hand. The final casualty count confirmed the completeness of the American tactical victory on a scale that would have been unimaginable at the start of the Pacific War. 377 confirmed. Japanese killed against 17 American casualties represented an exchange ratio that demonstrated the overwhelming superiority of modern combined arms warfare over traditional infantry assault tactics. This disparity reflected not only superiority in weaponry and equipment, but also fundamental differences in tactical doctrine, training methods, and operational coordination, sending a clear signal about the changes to come in the art of war. A reconstruction of Japanese planning indicated that enemy commanders had expected their rear attack to achieve tactical surprise and induce panic among the Marine defenders, leading to a collapse of American resistance and the recapture of key areas around the beachhead. Instead, their assault triggered a perfectly coordinated defensive response that systematically annihilated their forces while inflicting minimal casualties on the defenders. This battle became a textbook example of how superior doctrine and training can overcome numerical superiority and tactical surprise. The lessons learned at Bougainville influenced American military operations for decades after World War II, establishing principles of integrated fire support and coordinated defense that became fundamental elements of modern warfare. The night when Japanese commanders thought they had trapped Marine forces instead became the moment when traditional infantry tactics met their obsolescence against an evolving combined arms doctrine that would dominate battlefields for generations.